I am thrilled today to kick off the first part of our special collaboration with Colonial Williamsburg's Williamsburg brand. In this episode, you will hear from Wendy Kvalheim of Mottahedeh, a name that stands at the pinnacle of timeless elegance and heritage craftsmanship. Mottahedeh is renowned for its exquisite reproductions of historic porcelain, blending centuries-old designs with modern precision. As the CEO and president, Wendy is quite the driving force behind much of the brand's success, and she will talk all about the journey of Mottahedeh from its origins to its esteemed place in the world of fine design today. She'll tell us how she got involved with the company, which is really an interesting story, and delve into some of the exciting collaborations that they have with historic institutions, particularly Colonial Williamsburg. We also talk about the intricate design process that goes into creating their celebrated reproduction pieces and the meticulous attention to detail that defines their work. We also talk, of course, about Wendy's latest book, which came out this past spring, Splendid Settings, 100 Years of Mottahedeh Design. It has been incredibly well received, and it really looks at Mottahedeh design in a larger context, and I will allow you to listen to Wendy talk all about that. It was really fascinating to hear her perspective. Any major publication, prestigious media outlet that you can think of, they've been featured in. We're talking Architectural Digest, Elle Decor, Veranda, House Beautiful, Traditional Home, the New York Times, Luxury Magazine, Country Living, Southern Living. They're everywhere, and it's for a good reason. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. It is truly, truly interesting, insightful, and fun. Welcome to Grandma's Silver, where tradition meets today. I'm Allie, your host and the founder of the Grand Millennial Lifestyle. Here, we blend aesthetics with nostalgia, engaging in conversations with lifestyle brands, designers, and more to rediscover the timeless charm of the past. Join me as we journey from home to heart, illuminating the past and polishing the present with the gleam of Grandma's Silver. Wendy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. This is a really exciting conversation. I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, but also the brand.
Well, my name is Wendy Kvalheim, meaning whale home in Norwegian. I have been the owner of Mottahedeh and the design director for a little over 30 years. We originally bought the company from Mildred and Raffi Mottahedeh's estate. Raffi had passed away, and Mildred was 82 years old at the time. So she worked with me, for 5 years before she retired. Wow. And I got to get the karma, let's say, of Mildred. She was a powerhouse in her own right. And so we worked together for a good long time. Mildred and Raffi's business started out as a luxury goods company where they would travel the world at a time when travel was not very usual, especially by airplane, collecting all sorts of things, especially antiques. So they became one of the major authorities in antiques. And then at the Second World War, when a lot of the antiques dried up, they were thinking of how do we continue our business. They decided to make museum reproductions. And I say museum because very high quality and accurate to the period and the original intent of the antique. And it wasn't just porcelain, it was brass, silver, medallions, furniture, tollware, crystal, just whatever they could think of. And Mildred was a very creative person who was constantly thinking up things, though she was less interested in the production side of it. She didn't know that much about that. When I met Mildred was before I was born, because she knew my mother from the time she was 2 years old. And so we spent a lot of time together over the years. In 1979, we moved to New York City, my husband and I. We were just married. She was looking for a job for me. And so she contacted Joanne Lyman, who was then the director of the reproductions at Metropolitan Museum, got a job interview for me because they were looking for somebody in metals, but I was not qualified for that job, which I kind of knew at the time. So I went to art school with the idea of studying the technical aspects of making reproductions, with the idea of working in that field someday. I went back 4 years later and didn't get another job at the Metropolitan Museum. So I was home raising kids for a good 8 years. And then she was looking for a buyer for her company, and our business partner became Jeff Monshine, and my husband Grant and I bought the company, and his wife Pamela Monshine still is part owner today.
Wow, that's quite the journey. And how neat that your family had a connection to ours.
Yeah, she was like a great aunt.
That's really special. Now, right before we started recording, I was talking to you about the unique pronunciation of the brand name, and you were starting to tell me a story, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that because I think it's very interesting.
Well, Rafi came from Iran, Persia, called at various points, and he was an immigrant to the United States. And he was of a family who acquired the name of Mottahedeh because everybody in the country got to choose their surnames. Nobody had surnames before that. So it's a family name, but it means united in Farsi. So if you look it up in the dictionary, that's what it'll tell you.
You were also talking to me a moment ago. We were talking about just how many, I don't know if you would call them collaborations.
Yes,
But
definitely collaborations.
and you were saying you were in the 20s, which is really special. Did you want to name some of those before we launch into, of course, the one that is our primary focus today, which is Colonial Williamsburg?
Yes. Well, the various institutions are some heavy hitters, and in my book that just came out in April, we focused on Williamsburg, Winterthur, Historic Charleston, and Mount Vernon. But we also have done things with the Smithsonian Institution, the State Department, Historic Deerfield, Historic Natchez, Biltmore Estate, many different ones, because Mottahedehs became known for really high quality reproductions that were true to the original. And Mildred and Raffi were primarily historians. So they were interested in the development of these various materials and styles and all of that. And they had a very robust business in New York City as antique wholesalers.
We will talk about your book soon because that is a very exciting project. So, firstly, congratulations. Colonial Williamsburg, as you mentioned, is one of the institutions that is highlighted in the book. And of course, we are partnering with Colonial Williamsburg and the Williamsburg brand over the next several months. So I would love to highlight that a bit more and talk a little bit more and provide some context before we get into the specifics of the process and just figure out here or talk through how that partnership developed or how any of your partnerships really develop.
Yeah. Mildred and Raffi had a relationship with Nelson Rockefeller before he became vice president of the United States and also afterwards. And they shared a love of antiques, and they had, between the two of them, they had, or three, I guess the case would be, they had one of the most extensive Chinese export porcelain collections in the world. So Nelson, at the age, right, I don't even know what his ripe old age was, but in 1978 and 9, they launched into a Nelson Rockefeller reproductions business where he traveled around and found marvelous stuff and brought it back, plunked it down in their office and said, how about if you make a reproduction of this? And so he chose quite a number of really wonderful porcelain items. Way back when, the genesis of this is that his mother, Abby Rockefeller, put together the idea of making a historic town district to show the history of the founding of America. She, in particular, had quite a lot of pieces of Americana that became the foundation for their museum. But so he always had a love of antique collecting and porcelain. Williamsburg becoming what it has today started with the Rockefellers.
Timeline-wise, was Colonial Williamsburg one of their first collaborations?
It sort of grew into an endeavor. I wouldn't necessarily call it a business, an endeavor where they licensed products from their collection that then carried the back stamp of various people, Mottahedeh and Colonial Williamsburg. From there, they received royalties, which aided them in their educational programs. All of the museum licensed reproductions that we do have royalties attached that go to the institution. It'll go to the museum, it'll go to Mount Vernon, it'll go to Williamsburg, depending on what the product is. But the collaboration with Colonial Williamsburg and Mottahedeh began in 1989.
The vision ultimately really stemmed from them. Was it that they wanted to monetize?
Yes, but that wasn't the primary focus. The primary focus was making some great stuff and then making it viable as a business by selling it. And the majority of the sales actually came through Mottahedeh because we're a business to business company that sells to interior designers and retailers.
Mm.
And so a portion of everything that we sell in those venues goes to Colonial Williamsburg. Or not Colonial Williamsburg because they've separated these things out, but Williamsburg brand.
Yes. One of the things I've been most excited to talk to you about, my background is actually historical archaeology. I then went into event planning, which is a long story. One of the things I was super eager to chat with you about is the process of creating reproduction pieces, particularly because you're doing these collaborations with places that, of course, have long embedded rich history in America, but the timelines are often all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, there was nothing more exciting than pulling a piece of transferware out of the earth. But that helps you to also, if we're talking about it in the reverse, that helps you to date things based on what you're pulling out, the glaze, what it's made of, the clay, the ceramic. So I would really be interested understanding just how complex and complicated that is, especially because you're working with so many different areas. But if we were to hone in on Colonial Williamsburg, even there, you're looking at probably, such a variety of products to replicate, and the approach is not one size fits all. So I would love to talk about that.
It's not nearly as scientific as some people might think, because I don't consider myself an expert in any of these fields compared to other people who are working in them. But we try to understand the context of the time in which these things took place. And also knowing the development of the production of porcelain over time is helpful to date it, because there are certain things that would be possible at the time that, let's say, your piece of ceramic is coming out of the ground. There are certain things that are possible then and maybe not earlier. It could be later. But one thing that is very fortunate is that Mildred left me her decorative arts library. And I show pictures of it in my book, but it's one of the best decorative arts collections, I think, anywhere. Because when she was out and about, she was in Portugal, she was in Germany, she was in China, she was all over. She would go to the library, not the library, the bookstore, and she would find books on the production of glassware, styles of mid-century things, and just all kinds of anything that she found interesting that could help in understanding the origin of both production as well as design. And so when I want to find something out, this library that is now in my home it's vast, really. So that's very fortunate. And I do go there for ideas, and I also go there for where it fits in, you know,
Yeah.
in style. But when you have a company and you have to sell stuff to people, it's a matter of making something that they want to have, A,
Yeah, that's true.
and B, a big enough volume so that it's worth the effort, because it takes about a year and a half to develop any particular new lithography, which we do with decal makers. And you cannot transfer these things from one company to the next because they've been formulated for the company that's going to be producing it. For instance, if you, let's say with the Duke of Gloucester dinner pattern, you have to, which is Colonial Williamsburg's, you have to make sure that all the colors melt at the same time. Like in the past, they would paint things, fire it, paint it, fire it, paint it, fire it, because the different colors, which were made from oxides from naturally occurring ore, would melt at different temperatures, but they might conflict with each other in the kiln. So one thing would dissipate and another thing would look good. We collaborate with lithographers to make sure that we can fire the production in one go instead of many, and that the colors all cooperate with each other.
One of the questions and maybe I should have started with this one when we started, talking process, again, as it pertains to Colonial Williamsburg and the Williamsburg brand, because they have such an extensive collection, how do you
How
narrow
do you
down?
choose?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's the luck of the draw. Mrs. Mottahedeh had a really good eye, and she also knew the value of different designs, not monetarily, but artistically. When I first came to Mottahedeh, we went to historic Charleston, and and that she introduced me. I was mortified because such a newbie. They just took us to the basement and said, "Have a look.
Wow.
What's of interest to you?" So often it's that somebody comes to us with an interest for a particular piece, and sometimes it's something that we go to them for. But the key with these particular ones that we focused on is that they have great museum collections. And so you look around and you also figure out what might be a need, what might be a hole in your own offering. Like the French pay a fair bit of attention to yellow greens and rose colored things. But in the Chinese export area, we've had sort of blue greens. We're looking for something that can intermix with other people's products, and it can intermix with our products. We don't have market research. We listen to the reps saying what their customers are saying. We talk to people at trade shows. And basically, I just do what I like. That's how we do it.
Well, that's working very well for you, so keep at it. It's a great philosophy. On the design side, it's interesting, of course, because you are doing reproduction. So part of that work has been done. But how are you changing anything? Or yeah.
Yes. The people who buy our china, are interested in using it in a contemporary setting. And how we eat and how we entertain is considerably different than those time periods. So in the beginning, the museums were not very willing to have us make things that were not historic. I mean, in a historic style, because the focus was on the curator. But over time, they realized that they had to adapt. And so then they focused more on the product development team to see where it can fit in for today. And that's why our little tagline, Tradition for a Modern World, is really what we mean. There are some things that I've made, that have never been seen before. but people think they're historic, and we don't lie about it. Such as Lowestoft Rose Punch Bowl and the Ching Garden dinner service that is at Williamsburg actually did not exist before. It's made from wallpaper that was in the Lightfoot House on Williamsburg's campus. So we put wallpaper on a plate.
I love that.
That's one of those that doesn't, it gets overlooked a fair bit, but it's really a beautiful pattern.
I was going to also ask about some of the possible challenges.
There are challenges all along the way, I would say. Part of what we do is we ask factories to do something that they really don't like to do. There's a fair bit of research and development, and it's funny when they say impossible, and I never say impossible. You just need to approach it in a different way. And since I have a fair bit of training on the production side, I try to find ways to solve a problem that, it's a collaboration. Maybe they haven't thought of, or maybe they have, and it didn't work.
I would be interested to hear a little bit about the craftsmanship. You don't always have maybe you do, but the creative flexibility that an entirely modern brand would have. Doing reproduction work comes with, of course, needing to reproduce and have historical accuracy. So I would be curious to hear a little bit about how you intersect the two.
Well, there are very few factories that are willing to make what we want to make, and there used to be a lot more, and they've gone by the wayside. As production develops over time, factories are interested in producing a big volume with small wastage, and that means flatter shapes. The shapes and the products that we make are only coming out of a few factories in Portugal, Italy, and England and France, because the history of that is that they were made before the Industrial Revolution. So that means that these hollowware pieces are hand cast in plaster bats, they're hand glazed, and they're in small quantity. Plates today are very flat. Colors are, the industry average is about 8 colors. We start at 4 and we go up to 27, with our average being about 16.
Wow.
So we produce the decals in an independent place, and we hand them to the producer who has worked with us to make it viable as a decal, as a decoration. So the big challenge is to find somebody who's willing to do it, and then having a conversation, because you can work with somebody and, you just keep missing. We're very fortunate that the factories that we work with have been making product for us since before 1969, 68. We've made designs with Rookwood Pottery, which is in Cincinnati, and it was a company that was in existence and stopped producing in 1945, I think it was. It was the first woman-owned business in the United States, and they make beautiful stoneware, historic things. We make creamware, white, soft paste porcelain in Italy, and Majolica as well. Mostly hard porcelain, though.
Okay.
Because it's small quantities, and they're willing to do a lot of things that other factories aren't.
Now, going off of that a little bit, and you did mention that there is a mix of things that are more contemporary, but if we were to talk specifically about the Williamsburg Brands collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think, or what do you see it reflecting as far as history?
I think we've chosen the most enduring things that are in their collection. And great design endures. It has no time limit. People appreciate things about it today that they did 200 years ago. So it's a question of identifying those things in the museum. But I have to say, Liza Gussler has been through all phases at Williamsburg, and she was a curator, and then she was a licensed product developer. And so it's a question question of knowing the history and then how that's applicable today. People's response, good design rings like a bell. And if you hit a good piece of porcelain, it rings like a bell too. It's the story and it's the design. Each are equally important. And if you make something that's really hard to make, people have trouble copying you. I mean, they might. I cannot complain because we're the ultimate copyists. You know, if people say you're copying, it's true. But the difference is it's over 100 years old. And if it's over 100 years old, it's in the public domain. As long as somebody else doesn't have first use rights because they've trademarked it, which we have. So Williamsburg just has a fantastic collection. And one of the things that they have is tureens that are English Staffordshire stoneware. Oh, you name it, they have it.
Much of the intent of the collaboration is for folks to be able to integrate these historic, beautiful pieces into their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's an educational component at all for people?
Well, certainly there is. You know, I call it the dumbing down of America, which is not very polite. But what I found is that so many of these jewel-like companies that make very individualized things have gone away. You have chains. They have a design department, and it's really inexpensive, and it's for the masses and all that. But what that means is that people are not seeing the possibilities. They're not seeing a variety of things that you see when you go to a historic home or you go to a museum or someplace like that. They're not seeing it. So there is a big part that has to do with education.
Mm.
But education in a fun way. You know, we tell people use it however you want. You know, if you want to put flowers on the table in mugs, go right ahead. There are just unlimited ways that you can express yourself. We consider that Mottahedeh is like jewelry. So there are so many different patterns and things that you could mix them all up, and that's a part of our education. And we have a blog post that says, not your grandma's china. So if you have your grandma's china, get some other stuff and just get it out and move it around and serve it as a buffet. You know, I mean, stack the plates up on your kitchen counter like you would with anything else and have a conversation about it.
I love that you encourage people to actually use it because, of course, it's beautiful. And so it can be out, it can be displayed, it can be integrated into your actual design.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's also there's a utilitarian focus. I mean, it is dinnerware, it is plates. I mean, so I love that you encourage folks not just to display it, which of course that
Yeah.
is a great purpose for it too. But I love that you're actually encouraging folks to really take the pieces and use them in their lives, not just their.
Yeah. Be creative. Express yourself, really. And the more colors there are in a design, the more options you have for integrating other things in it. And when you go to the store, sometimes you see a whole entire wall, which is white plates with a platinum band or a gold band. Why? Is what I say to myself.
Oh my gosh.
Because people are afraid. They don't know what would be inappropriate and they don't want to commit a mistake, you know.
I have some more questions about this, but I feel like it works to also talk in tandem about your book because, one of the questions that I had was what some of your favorite pieces from the collaboration are.
Mm-hmm.
But something tells me that you probably made a point of highlighting some of those in your book. So let's talk a little bit about that. Did you want to give people a little overview of what is in there?
Sure. Mottahedeh is really about the history of porcelain and decorative arts. And it covers a very large time span of history. But beyond that, a very large time span of the company being around. A lot of people don't know anything about Mottahedeh. They've never heard of it because it's not in department stores, except for Bloomingdale's, Neiman Marcus, Saks, places like that. So there are two books that I've written. One is called From Drawing Board to Dinner Table, and it talks about the technical aspects as well as a number of the products that we've made. So for the second book, I wanted not to repeat myself. I mean, that's not a good idea. What we did was we showed the various products in a lot of different vignettes and environments, and something about me. There's a lot in there about me. Then we got toward the back of the book to be very contemporary settings. So it kind of covers everything again, but not in the same way. What I did realize is that there are many, many things that we've made over the years that didn't get shown in the book, even though we're talking about 100 years of Mottahedeh design. What has happened during this time period is that people have gone from film to digital photography. And we have really great digital shots, but the early stuff is not very well represented. So there are a lot of things that we didn't talk about. It really, in my opinion, really is vast. It's a coffee table book. It has captions. It also has my cookies. I have been making cookies for the New York tabletop show for like 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And maybe not 30 years, maybe 25.
That's still impressive.
What our motto is if they don't come for the porcelain, they'll come for the cookies. So
this is a beloved recipe that we can find in the book.
Yes, they're all in the back.
I love that. Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, what is it that you hope people take away from the book?
One of the words that came up that I had not really heard before, showing my ignorance, is material culture.
Yep.
And it's a word that museums use a lot and curators use a lot. Material culture is what you produce and surround yourself with that gives you meaning within your own culture or anybody else's. I would like us to help propagate the idea that we have a material culture of beauty for no other reason than just that it's beautiful, or we understand something about another culture.
We used to, in archaeology, talk a lot about material culture because that kind of fits in. And on the anthropological side, we would joke that it's really what it really boils down to is the study of stuff and really dissecting that. But you glean a lot of insight into how people live, and of course, we'll encourage people to go visit Colonial Williamsburg, and you will talk in a second. You'll be there soon. The collections, and to be able to walk around and to immerse yourself and see not just how people utilized these things, but to appreciate that beauty that you touched on. It's really neat when you get to see people
absorb that and enjoy it and learn from it. Yeah. In the first book, what I say is eating can be about, putting things in your mouth that you need for sustenance, or eating can be a beautiful experience that includes conversation and all sorts of things. And so why limit ourselves? But I think people do need to be exposed to it, and they need to have some education on the topic. It's not about status or class, in my opinion. Though these really beautiful things were made in Europe by emperors and rulers, everybody wanted to have the latest and the greatest, and they did. But people every day here in the States can have access to that. And so it's not elitist, it's sharing.
You mentioned this feels a little full circle, but Mottahedeh means united. It is in many ways a unifier.
Right. It can be, yes.
Bringing people, brings people together. We have a varied range of listeners. We actually have many industry professionals that are listening along and that follow along. And so I would love to hear a little bit about how maybe industry professionals are utilizing the reproduction pieces, reactions, feedback, things that you're hearing, because of course you have a very close relationship with many of these folks. I would be really interested to hear about that a bit more.
Well, we have a large contingent of interior designers that buy from us, and we also have retailers. The event planners have become a very large group with us. They're not limited by the price of the materials, I think, but also you have some very creative people. I can't say enough about their talent. I mean, I think these people are very talented. But they're also quite pragmatic, and you need to get the stuff to them on time. Toot sweet. Customer service is a big part of that.
In its own way, the craftsmanship of the product is almost an extension of that customer service because there is so much detail and care being taken to ensure the customer is getting a quality product. So I would love to hear a little bit more about the specifics of that and the process.
People are always interested in the process of production
Mm-hmm.
because, they're wondering if it's hand painted or if it's another kind of decoration. And so the decoration that goes on there as a water transfer decal is made up of oxides and not ink, not paint.
Mm.
So when they get fired, it fuses onto the plate at the stage that the plate vitrifies, meaning turns into glass. And when a plate turns into glass, it's unstable. You have to put it through a kiln and get it slowly up to a temperature that is going to mean that all of the colors fuse onto the plate. The hand painting process is very bespoke, let's say, but we put that into painting the borders and the handles and brushing it with gold, and then we put it through another firing, which
Okay.
is at a lower temperature than the initial firing. So for something like tobacco leaf, you have the green body, which dries out, and you fire that to what we call bisque. That is the unglazed. Then they glaze it in a slurry of the same sort of thing, fire it again, and there you get your shiny plate, which is non-porous. With hard porcelain, which is what we make, it's non-porous even if you don't glaze it. Bone china is not, because they've stirred in about 40% bone ash to give it structure in the kiln. In the little spaces it will absorb water. So you always have to glaze bone china. And then they put the decoration on, fire it again. Then they paint it and fire it again. So it's 4 firings, and there are a lot of different ways that this thing can go wrong.
Yeah.
And they have a certain amount of wastage in that. Since hard porcelain fires at a higher temperature than bone, it's more durable. We put all of our porcelain items in the dishwasher.
Oh, wow.
People don't believe us. We tell them that.
I want to be sure to mention that you will soon be at Colonial Williamsburg for both a lecture, which is you will be joined by their curatorial team, if I'm not mistaken, followed by a
Mm-hmm.
book signing.
Yes.
That is September the 20th, I
Yeah.
believe. And I will
Yeah.
link to that in our show notes. I've also already shared it on Instagram, so folks will be able to find it. But by the time this
Okay.
episode comes out, we'll make sure to have shared it again so that people can see it. But that's very exciting.
Excited. Liza
Liza.
Gusling. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I saw she's joining you.
Yes. She's making the introduction, and we have worked together for quite a few years, and she's so knowledgeable, and she's really a delightful person too. I'm looking forward to that. And Angelica Kuttner is the other person who will be speaking, and she's the curator. She'll be talking about specifically the Williamsburg patterns that are Mottahedeh.
Register. It's going to be an incredible event. And like I said, it'll be followed by a book signing, and you can talk to Wendy in person. I will be sure, of course, to post the links to both of your books in the show notes, website information, social media follow information, so that people can connect with you. You are obviously doing incredible work, so we want people to be tuned into all of that. And I just really thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today. We could have talked for 4 hours. So we did talk about a lot and covered a lot, but I just appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you so much. I have appreciated what you're doing too.